Hello ladies and gentlemen, this is Blue Maxima and I'm here checking out KATANAKAMI, A Way of the Samurai story. This is post-commentary because I've tried to record this video 3 times and I just can't seem to get it right when I actually have to play the game, so let's try talking about it without having to worry about playing it. I do all the usual menu going through stuff here and it's all pretty well mentioned. I will point out before I get into the story of this game, what it's about, that some of the settings I actually really appreciate, including some of the gameplay settings that let you change things like how far away you have to be before the lock-on breaks, and how much you automatically turn to face enemies when you attack, when you're facing the wrong direction, when you're locked onto one. It's a really nice touch, although it's not helped out by the fact that when I first started up the game, it started out in Japanese, and I had to go and fumble through the menus to actually select it. That brings me on to an interesting topic, though. The fact that they only announced this game for English release something like a week before they said they were actually going to release it. I don't know why Spike Chunsoft decided to do this. They've also basically done no advertising for it since they put out the press email, to my knowledge, and, well, that's kind of disappointing because this game's great. When I get into the game, when you see that in the footage, and see the fact that they've put 9 hours into this game and I have no signs of stopping yet, it's kind of a good sign, wouldn't you think? I am running this on a 8700K and an RTX 2080. You can see the frame rate in the top right. The game's also coming out on Switch and PS4, to my knowledge, so you can play it there if you want. I'm probably going to be putting this on my GBD Win too and hope that the PC version's optimized well enough to play on that, but, well, we'll see. So, what's this game about? It is a Way of the Samurai spin-off. Way of the Samurai is more known for being a third-person action game where you're a random traveler dropped into a new place somewhere in Japan. There's multiple factions vying for control of the region, and there's usually some stories going on in the background of all of them and their characters, and you decide who you want to help out and where. This game isn't too far from that concept, but it's also pretty far from that concept. So, you're a random dude who's wandered into this blacksmith's place, whose daughter's just been kidnapped by a rich baron who's a loan shark, and you basically have to help the guy repay all his debt in order to get his daughter back. It's all pretty simple stuff, but there is hints, of course, that there's more going on underneath the surface, and there is some faction stuff going on. There's 3 factions that consist of like a triangle of people that are always on shaky ground with each other, and basically need to go and, well, who basically want to go and fight each other, basically, and are just waiting for the opportunity. And you're in a unique position to give them weapons. And if you give some of them weapons, other of them will be like, oh shit, they've got lots of weapons and we don't. We need more weapons. How much do you want for your weapons? So it helps you out because it lets you make more money. But there's also some other benefits to it as well. Like if you give more money to one faction, their particular shop will have more stuff available for you to buy. It's pretty simple to understand economics, really. You've also got plenty of things to do at the actual blacksmith themselves, because, well, he's willing to help you out. He needs to be kept nice and calm through regular injections of sake, and he also does things like make random swords for you, lets you upgrade your swords, and lets you do just other things like that. You also get things like quests on the outside to go into the game's dungeon and, well, just go do something on a particular floor. You'll get a reward for it. And you also get the work orders that are basically just the faction saying, hey, we need some swords. Can you sell us some swords, please? And I've been actually making an effort to sell to 2 factions and leaving one faction entirely on their own. And that's resulted in their tension with the other 2 factions going pretty damn high. Unfortunately, I haven't had that much time to work with the, excuse me. I haven't had that much time to work with the faction system because due to the way the game works, whenever you go into the dungeon and come back out, that's what causes time to go forward, right? So you go in, you come out, and everything's happened, and then you can fiddle around some more, give people some swords, go and kill some people if you feel entirely up to it, and that's okay. The problem with it is that runs into the dungeon can take anywhere up to an hour. So even with like 10 hours in the game, as of this footage that I am playing to you on screen right now, I still haven't managed to pull off much in the way of really fiddling around with the way the system works. So can't really tell you much about it. I've been trying, but I really can't. It's kind of weird. But that's all the stuff on the surface. I'm hoping that eventually, when you get the factions decide to go to war with each other, there'll be actual full-on fights out in the overworld and not just a couple of random people wandering around. There's also a couple of other things you can do, like you can send gifts to the girl in question who got kidnapped. And sometimes she has some really sarcastic things to say in the newspaper about it, but she'll give you items back as a result, so, you know, why not, right? So, the actual main gameplay of KATANAKAMI is a sword-fighting roguelike, more or less. You go down into the dungeon, you go through different floors, you fight enemies along the way, and if you get to the bottom, you get to keep all your stuff and you get to come back. If you don't make it to the bottom, you lose all your shit and you have to start again. You really don't want to do that with a sword that you've upgraded entirely to max, because you will leave it behind. It is also a Shiren the Wanderer style roguelike, where all of your levels that you gain will be lost when you come back to the surface. But in this game, it doesn't matter as much as in a game like Shiren the Wanderer. You'll just get levels as you go naturally, and it just helps you fight off other dudes. It doesn't really do too much for you in the grand scheme of survivability, so it's not that bad. Your swords, however, do keep all of their upgrades, so you do want to be keeping around some really good swords as much as possible. You can also go and buy things like immediate get back on your feet potions when you die, insurance so that you can bring items back, all of that general stuff, you know? It's expensive, but it's there if you need it. You're not going to have it for the first few hours, though, I'll tell you that much. There are some other settings you can turn off, like other players being able to drop in. Now, it's not other players in the traditional sense, it's their spirit, a la Neo, except they're not dead, they're up and walking around. You can choose to duel them, and if you win, you'll get their sword, so that's cool. But, and that will help you out if monsters come and attack them directly, but other than that, they aren't really that useful, but it's kind of neat to see them there. I don't know if I've actually run into anyone else's, like, proper spirit at this point, because this is a pre-release copy of the game. I'm not sure who else is playing it on Steam. I'm not going to claim to know, but yeah, I've been playing it for a fair bit. I'm pretty sure I've just seen like a couple of pre-included spirits, like the one that's officially from Spike Chunsoft, and that's it. But it's still not that bad. It'll be nice to see when more people come along. So, the actual gameplay, sword fighting roguelike. You can carry 3 swords at any one time, and one of the really neat things about KATANAKAMI's combat is that every individual sword has its own moveset, and you have to level up the swords individually by fighting with them in order to unlock all the moves. And there's like 250 unique swords. I'm not even kidding. Like, most of them are locked to certain stances. There's like 10 stances that give you minor bonuses and also determine what sort of swords they are. You might have swords like the EI swords, which are ones that you draw out of the sheath in order to actually attack people with. Then you might get like the Kusoni Gamaru, or the red sword that I have in this particular footage, which is a heavier, more deliberate sword, but it does a lot more damage. And then you've got just like some more middle-of-the-road stuff, like my yellow sword that I've got. So you've got 3 different swords. They've all also got different levels of durability, so you need to swap between them in order to make sure that your sword doesn't break on your way down. Because trust me, some of the first few swords you get will break quick, and while you can repair swords with any other kind of sword while their durability is above 0, as soon as they hit 0, you need a sword of the same type in order to actually repair it. So make sure you keep an eye on your stuff, kids. Whetstones aren't that expensive. You can keep them around for... You can keep a lot of them around for fairly cheap, and I highly recommend it. Not to mention making use of every sword repair bench you find along the way. So let's talk about the combat. The combat itself is pretty simple to understand. Your moves are all done with a combination of the X and Y buttons, and they're all combos. So you might get an XXX combo, you might get a YXX combo, you might get a combo that needs you to hold towards the enemy, then press X, then press Y twice. That's about as complicated as it gets. And as I said, every individual sword has its own moveset, so you'll be learning what each sword can do, what its special combinations are, and just how good it is. Each sword also has its own inherent quality level, which determines how many actual moves they have on them. So having better swords to get more moves is highly recommended. So if you get something with like a level 5 or 6, it's worth trying it out because it might be better in general in comparison to one that's level 3. However, their individual strength, durability, and critical rate are determined per sword. It's not something that's ranked, that's linked to the level in any way. So even if you do find like a level 2 sword that you like and you upgrade a lot of the way, you're more than welcome to hang on to it for as long as you feel is necessary, although it might not do you too well in the much later stages. But yes, most of your moves are done with the X and Y buttons, and you've also got a block, and in that block you can also do things like do a battle shout that might scare some enemies away and block certain ranged projectiles that you can't block normally. They tell you in a hint tip that it's anything that doesn't have a physical body to deflect can only be deflected with the shouts. There's also being able to kick and throw enemies for guard breaks, and you've also got the ability to dash around a bit. And the main thing about blocking, which is really cool though, is if you manage to pull off, if you manage to pull off a block right as they're about to hit you, you'll do I can't remember what the exact name of the move is, but basically it lets you zoom in, do massive amounts of damage, and if you kill them, you can then proceed to do the same move on the next enemy that's right in front of you. And you can do this up to like 5 times. I've done it up to 5 times in this footage, and it always feels awesome to do. The timing isn't unfair, it is quite difficult to hit, but it's definitely not unfair, and it is just really satisfying to do because the effects and the sound and just everything they do is really good. Like, the game's presentation is top-notch. They got the whole theme of ancient spiritual Japan down pat. All of the enemies look great, and all of their telegraphs of their attacks are entirely fair, look real good, and really do help you feel like you're in a battle with some really devastating enemies. And as a result, in combination with the fact that you've got 3 different swords to carry around, they all play differently, and they all have wow, completely lost my train of thought there. The fact that you've got your different swords, your enemy hordes, and the overall fantastic feeling of the combat thanks to great sound effects, great presentation, and a bunch of really cool mechanics like being able to do that parry and then chain it onto a bunch of different enemies. Not to mention a bunch of like really nice touches they put in. Like, you can grab an enemy and throw them and they'll ragdoll other enemies that they run into. And you can make enemies commit friendly fire. There's all sorts of little things like that which really make the combat really satisfying from moment to moment. Not to mention the fact that almost every enemy has a sword to drop, which is really nice. And it's all added on top with the combo meter, which rewards you with better item drops and more XP for the sword you're holding. So if you're consistently trying to get more enemies into combat, you'll be doing better, your swords will be leveling up faster, and you'll be getting more rewards as a result. It's great. It's a really well-tuned system. It's also helped out by the fact that every sword can individually charge a katana time mechanic. Katana time is basically fever mode. The effects are turned up to about 3 times what they are in the regular game. You can go around swinging like a madman with increased damage and speed, and your combo meter will soar into the heavens. It is really quite something to watch. The effects look great, it's immensely satisfying to do, and when you get stuck in a cursed area in the dungeons, and you have to defeat like 9 enemies within 60 seconds, pulling out a sword that has a full katana time meter and going, "Bitch, I win," is immensely satisfying to do. It's great. And that's the main reason I've put 9 hours into KATANAKAMI. It's not because of the whole, like, building up a bunch of money to help that guy pay off some loan broker for his daughter. No, it's this combat. It's been keeping me engaged for way longer than it has any right to, and I don't care. It's really good. It's also helped out by the fact that the game's got that weird sense of humor, like that guy who won't stop shitting in the bushes in front of the blacksmith. And the fact that you've got a dedicated button to prostrate yourself. Now, this helps you out in a few situations, mainly ones where you've insulted people's honor. You can just, like, dive down in front of them and say, "I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry." You can also use it to pray to statues who might give you a buff or who might give you a bit of a, basically set your ass on fire buff. But it's always worth doing. However, it also does damage to enemies. So if their health bar is just that little bit off the end, you can prostrate and send your head slamming into their stomach, and that's a win. You can also do this after you've successfully pulled off a parry, making your headbutt look like you're made entirely of diamonds. It's ridiculous. It's really cool, and I love it. It's dumb, it's horrendously dumb, but it's great. It just goes to show that that little bit of sense of humor that Way of the Samurai's got is still around. And there are a few cameo appearances as well. I said that I'm not very familiar with Way of the Samurai, but I have played Way of the Samurai 1, and one of the first people that you run into in that game is this black dude with an afro, and he's in this game. He's one of the residents of the town in this game. So that's cool. That's fun. I don't mind that one bit. They don't really do much at the moment. I'm not entirely sure what their purpose is. I'm hoping that it turns out later on that they have more to do with it than they're just like there for the sake of being there because it's a Way of the Samurai game and they can do that. But, well, you know, that's just one thing to hope for. I do have a couple of problems with the way the gameplay works though. First off, Vitality feels kind of useless as a thing. Like, you get so much items for both Vitality and health recuperation that it feels kind of pointless to have them. Vitality is mainly used for charging your attacks and dashing across the field, but you can also put your sword away and stand still and it will recover your health if you're missing any. But as I said, you get so many health recovery items that it doesn't really matter. You just end up like having a lot of items anyway. And also, every time you level up, which happens a fair amount, like you can usually get to level 20 by the time you get to the bottom of what I'm hoping is the first dungeon. But you end up leveling up, your life and your vitality get maxed out. So pretty much anytime you think to yourself, like outside of a couple of situations like, oh, I might need just a little bit more health to make it through. No, you can usually just rely on the level ups to recover all your health and vitality for the most part. And the items are just there to make sure you really don't bottom out. So it just feels kind of pointless, at least with the way the game's balanced at the moment. I'm also making the game look a bit easy because all of my swords are actually pretty well upgraded for this state of the game. Mainly because I've been having trouble figuring out how to get out of the first dungeon. And I'm not entirely sure what I'm supposed to do. Now, I've been down to the very bottom, and you see me go down to the very bottom in this footage that I've got going on in the background here. And I've left this guy alone twice, and it's played a story cutscene twice, but it just doesn't seem to go on any further, and I still seem to be going through the same dungeon over and over again. I'm not really sure what I'm missing in order to get into the next part of the game, but it just doesn't seem to be there. Maybe I have to wait until I pay off a certain amount of money from Mr. Loan Shark, but yeah, I've been spending 10 hours going through the same dungeon and it's starting to become a bit easy because all my swords are really well upgraded. I know most of the enemies and basically I just save up a bunch of katana times for the bosses and I'm fine. So I'm hoping that the game decides to let me move on to the next set of dungeons really soon because if it doesn't, I'm going to start to get bored. What else is there to talk about? Honestly, I'm not quite sure. I think that's everything. There's not that much else to it. I mean, I already talked about how you can run into other people and duel them for their sword and all that, so there are traps on the ground, and the way the levels are laid out are pretty similar over time, so that might contribute to some of the sameness feeling that I'm starting to feel as well. There are some things that can make it go faster, like you can find portals that will skip you down multiple levels. You can find a mystery floor, which might be a hard challenge or a, or a treasure room, but for the life of me, I can't get into a single treasure room to save my life. And you can also go into red tinted portals that'll skip you down really far, but the few levels that you do have to play will be a lot harder. But yeah, that's pretty much everything I've got. The combat is really satisfying. They've got the presentation down pat. All the different swords help give the game a bit of variety, which it kind of needs when you're going up against the same enemies over and over again. The yeah, the actual combat itself is a lot of fun to play. Getting all your stuff together in order to try and sell it off and have enough money to pay off the guy who's charging your blacksmith is enjoyable, although I do wish it moved a bit faster. Maybe if the dungeon crawls weren't so immensely long, maybe it would be a little bit quicker and I'd feel a little bit better about that, but overall, I don't really mind. Not in the grand scheme of things. I'm really enjoying my time with KATANAKAMI. I'm hoping that will work on my GPD win too, so I can keep it around on that and pick it up for when I want to do a dungeon run every now and again, because it sounds like it'd be great for that sort of game style. Basically, I'm just hoping the later parts of the game, when I can figure out how to get to the bloody things, will end up... Hopefully, I'm just hoping that the stuff that comes up is just as good as this, because this is really enjoyable. I love sending, like, snow women up to the sky, seeing the massive sprays of blood everywhere, seeing all of that stuff really well presented. The atmosphere is on point. It's got that good little sense of humor going on. And, yeah, I'm just, outside of, like, its general pacing issues, I'm enjoying it immensely. And I'm hoping that it does do relatively well, because, as I said, they kind of just dropped the announcement out of nowhere. And it's like, you know, we're going to release this game like a week from now, and if you want review code, we've got it. And when we don't seem to want to advertise it outside just saying in this press email, which is disappointing, because I think this game might go under the radar for a lot of people who might actually enjoy it. And hopefully it might convince them to make Way of the Samurai 5, because this was originally meant to be Way of the Samurai 5, but apparently Way of the Samurai 5 fell apart more than once while they were trying to make it, and they were like, let's do something simple instead, just to grease the wheels a little bit and help us get out of this little rut we're in trying to make Way of the Samurai 5. And now that I've played this, now I know I have to go back and play all of the original Way of the Samurai games. The first two came out on, what was it, PS2, then they had enhanced PSP releases. Then there was Way of the Samurai 3 and 4, which both came out on PS3, but they also have PC ports now, both of which I own, so I have no real excuse not to get around to any of them at this point. Maybe there'll be a video for the future. Anyway, I'm just going to let the rest of this gameplay footage go for now. As I said, I really enjoy KATANAKAMI. I highly recommend it if you're even remotely a fan of action games, because it's really good. And I'm hoping that once I can find my way out of this first dungeon, it'll get even better. This has been Blue Maxima. I will see you all next time.
ようこそ。それでどうしたものか。そう。いかがか。また頼む。それでどうしたものか。いかがか。また頼む。どうしたものか。それでどうしたものか。いかがか。ではまた。そう。いかがか。ではまた。よく来た。ようこそ。それでどうしたものか。それで断る。それで ようこそ。
怖いのか。ならぬ。何それ。
加勢する。どうした？おい！お主なるもう鍵つ俺を確かに人違い出口は無用がないなら
見つ逃げを火事や風情に化けるとは
しつこいへ
さあ
諦めろ
ざれならば貴様